All right, I'm here with world-famous video game composer Brian Lee White.
D-list composer.
World famous D-list. I mean, whatever. You know, it's around the same thing. it's neck to neck with YouTuber.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I feel like the most famous YouTuber is like C-list, actual celebrity.
Okay, that's like
same with video game composer. Huh?
Yeah,
you're there.
We're looking to change that.
We're trying to move our way up.
Exactly.
So what better way to do this than actually get inside video game music and what even it is, what's different than making regular music, some of the gear behind it. So today it'd be cool if you just walked us through maybe a session of something existing and just kind of give us an inside look into video game composing world.
Yeah. So I think what I'll show you guys today is kind of our asset preparation, stem mastering, sort of how do we get sort of the music that we compose, which is composing like anything else, how do we then prep sort of that linear music that we've composed and the client likes, let's say to a certain scene or situation in a video game, how do we then break that up into pieces that are going to work interactively? How do we sort of take our music, just like music you would write, and then sort of cut that up and master that for a game to put into the game? And I'll show you some of sort of my session workflow for that, as well as some of my hardware control surfaces that kind of help me work really fast on kind of moving a lot of assets through the system, because it became thousands of assets by the time we're done with the game. And so working efficiently, quickly, staying organized is huge.
Some of these words you're using are already way over my pay grade. Just fancy words like assets.
Well, you just have to ask me if you've got a question.
All right. Well, let's get to it. Let's jump right into it. What do we got here?
Okay, so what we are looking at here is a mix master template, a stem mix master template. And what I have in the template is a scene from Callisto Protocol. I can show you the video that we would write to and kind of just play this back for you here, a little bit of it, and I'll explain this scene.
Oh boy. Like a nightmare slippery slide. Yeah,
what's even more nightmare is that he's sliding through sewage water.
Oh.
So we call this the poop slide.
Poop slide. Okay, cool.
And you're not hearing sound design right now. This is just kind of a rough capture. Of course, you can go out. The game's been released. You can go out and watch a playthrough of the finished version of this if you want on YouTube. Just do a search for Pipe Slide.
Or buy it and play it yourself.
Hey. So the situation here, what seems like just sort of scoring to a movie. You heard the music. The music was kind of like following the action. The player actually has control, so you can control yourself moving through the pipe slide. And there are different points where you run into these obstacles, and if you don't navigate past them, you die, and there's a death scene. So instead of just being able to compose a linear piece of music, we had to compose the music for the scene, but then we had to think about clever ways of how are we going to break this up into points where you can die and the music diverges and goes to sort of a death scene.
And has to happen
has to happen immediately, because I don't know if you're going to die. We don't know if you're going to die. We can't sort of precog your death, but we do want to build up to these points because we do know approximately what time the player is going to approach these points. You have a little bit of control, but it's kind of on rails, right? So you can control your side-to-side movement, but you can't slow yourself down too much. And so we needed to figure out a way, okay, how do we divide this piece up that allows us to kind of keep that cinematic feel to the music, so the music feels like it's anticipating things, but we can sort of turn on a dime in case you don't miss the object or the saw that kind of comes down on you, and that cuts to a death cue. Or we can continue on and sort of build the cue throughout. And
a cue is just a piece of music.
Cue is just a piece of music, yeah. And in composing, whether it's for games, TV, or film, it's just we call it a cue.
Cool.
C-U-E.
Nice.
Instead of a song.
Right.
But you can call it whatever you want.
A tune. A ditty.
And so how we approached this, originally we just had this video and we just wrote to it music. We just said, let's write some cool music and make sure that the music captures the piece, make sure that the client is happy with how that music sounds. And so we did that first. And then we figured out how do we cut it up. We worked sort of with sort of the technical side of the audio team to figure out what is possible. And we decided the best way to do this is to break up the cue into lots of little cues that we just called parts, for lack of a better term. And we have 11 parts in this. And those 11 parts kind of work together like train cars. The clever thing is that some of them are a little longer than they need to be in case you need a little bit more, like you slowed yourself down along the wall and you need a little bit more time to get to the next train car. But they're written in such a way that the pieces can interrupt each other. And so I can show you here sort of how we broke these pieces apart. Get rid of this video window.
So this is one part you're going to play first.
So this is one part. This is the intro part I'm going to play here. And you can see I've just labeled these with regions.
Okay. You're sensing a sewage landslide coming.
Danger. This is going to be the start of where it kicks you into the QTE. And do you notice how the cue didn't just start there? We have a nice long tail. Mm-hmm. And the reason we have this kind of long build with that nice long tail is we want to be able to crossfade stitch the next piece of the train car in. And so the next piece is when he hits the water and you have player control and you're flowing down the sewage pipe. And so that sort of builds and builds and builds in anticipation. And so we kind of built this anticipation rising, but we built it just a little bit longer, maybe a bar or two. We kind of sussed it out and figured out what made sense. We built it a little bit longer, kind of rising in anticipation to the next point where you can either die or you can break through that next gate, fall down to this next segment. And here's that piece that connects the segments. And so notice how that just comes in, it hits, and then it's got a nice long tail that can kind of fill the gap. The hit can just interrupt that piece of music, and we can do a quick crossfade out of it, and it almost seems as if we're scoring to picture, right?
You meant for that to happen the
exactly,
whole time,
because I mean, a lot of times in film, there's like really abrupt changes to the cut, and so we can kind of take advantage of the fact that sort of filmic music doesn't always fall sort of on the bar or on the beat exactly.
Like when your bad drummer comes in on not the downbeat, it's a very jarring experience for everybody that you're essentially recreating in the poop slide.
Exactly. And so again, I mean, we don't have to look at all these, but these are all just different pieces that different segments that we stitch together. And if at any time you die, we did a bunch of different death loops. Here's just one of them, or death sort of stingers, if you will. And those, you hear how that's designed to just trigger immediately. There's not a lot of like, because it's like, when you die, I didn't know that you were going to die. I need to hit him with that quick. And then the brain can kind of fill in the rest.
It's a modern day twist on the Mario death scene.
Yeah,
it's just a kind of a rip-off in my estimation, but you're trying your best out here.
That's it. And so that's just an example of a typical situation in a game where it's sort of linear music, but we need to stitch it together in a way that there is some interactivity. There's a million other situations that you encounter in this game and in all the games we do. Sometimes we have pieces that need to loop indefinitely. So you could be like just sitting and hanging out for an hour.
Sure.
And we have to account for that. In this situation, fortunately, it was on rails. Like once the slide starts, you either can control yourself and get through it, or you can die and start over again. And so in that situation, sort of like stitching these pieces together with a little bit of handle and crossfading and having these hard interrupts was sort of the best solution for that.
So you'll make a cue, and then you'll export it, and then you'll send it over to the audio director, who passes it on to like a dev team, and then they integrate it into the actual engine of the game. Is that how it works?
So either the audio director themselves or somebody on the audio team, an audio implementer, will do it. Sometimes we'll do that. You know, that's something that we understand. So we can, because we understand that process, we can cut the assets up how we would do it if we were implementing it. But yeah, it's just somebody, either we do it in a middleware or like Wise with Unreal or the dev team handles stitching it together. But we always sort of come together on a way that we're going to approach it first, and then kind of test it out to figure out, okay, what technology do we have? Is this going to work? Will the engine allow for this? Like, what do we know? What do we not know? You know, like that kind of thing. So that we can decide on the best course of action, because not all games have the same technology. Some have really fancy tech about how, you know, information about what is going on.
Sure. And some games are that Lord of the Rings Gollum game. That's
I don't know what happened with that.
Hey, whatever. Why don't you take me through some of the gear?
Yeah.
There's some cool stuff over here.
So, again, typically how we approach these cues get composed in a variety of different DAWs. I'm in Reaper right now for finishing, so the mastering workflow for the cue. And so I will get stems, either if I did the cue or if someone on my team did the cue, I will get stems that are already mixed. So it's like everybody's a big boy. They can sort of, you know, mix a cue, and I'll get sort of the group stems that I ask for, you know, let's say low percussion, high percussion, effects, pads, bass, you know, brass, that kind of thing. Then I get a little bit of control over the mastering process, so I can really clean it up, add the punch, and kind of break up the assets into a way that can then go into the game engine. And so that can be a lot of assets, and so
it's a lot to keep track of.
It's a lot to keep track of, and that's why I use Reaper. It's just because I can do a lot of stuff that is automated, and I can kind of customize things just for myself. So that way, at the end of the day, when I want to export a cue, I'm just hitting a couple buttons instead of spending, you know, another full day exporting out
one
assets,
at a time,
labeling them
next,
separately.
next.
Exactly, yeah. And so part of that speed is this control surface setup I have.
Let me go to handheld here so we can get some other video here. So this is totally custom. You've got this new SSL controller that Sweetwater sent over. Shout out to Sweetwater. Thanks for sponsoring the videos, as always. And then you have just two iPads that you kind of rigged up yourself to work with Reaper. Is that what we got?
Yeah. So these are two of the big iPad Pros. They're just the ones. Like, I bought them off eBay. I just wanted big screens,
right,
basically. So I got them real cheap. And they're both running TouchOS-C. Custom templates that I've set up for this. And these templates talk to Reaper using a couple different protocols. I use something called Relearn, which allows me to really customize how this TouchOS-C template works with Reaper, so that it actually updates to the selected track. You can see that so it's kind of linked, working through. That way I kind of have everything, I can go through my different tracks here, select, my master bus and things like that.
Cool.
And the idea is that it's totally customizable. And the reason I went with this is that I had other control surfaces. Like I had, the soft tube one, which is really cool. It sounds great. The problem was, it was like, well, I have to use the soft tube EQ, the soft tube compressor, and it's like, I use like 100 different plugins, and I use different plugins on different tracks and different groups. And a lot of times I only use one function of that plugin, like one knob,
right?
So like I like to set my compressor up where I have a compress. I have it just on one
That's it. That's the
One
whole
thing.
plugin, essentially.
That's it.
Everything you need from that plugin is on this.
Exactly. So I can
Okay.
show that plugin if I come over here. There, if we're working on sort of the high park bus, and let me just bring that up onto screen here, and we will click on that guy. And so there's that compressor. And so I've got that
Okay, cool.
parameter just set on the comp. This happens to have auto makeup gain, so I don't even need to worry about my makeup gain there. I just push into it.
Okay.
And you can see there's a bunch of other settings on this.
For sure.
And I might come into those settings.
So you could map those if you want. But
I
they're
could
not-
map them,
okay.
but the idea of this is that I'm only having the things that I touch 99% of the time. If I want to come in and tweak something, I don't want to think, I don't want to look. I just want to be in the flow.
The greatest hits.
And I want to go, hey, this needs a little compressing. Boom, blah.
All right.
That's it.
Cool.
You know, and I have, and this looks strange. Like, a lot of these labels look weird. Like, what is clarity? What is stabilize? Refine? Things like that. These are all just kind of like one function of plugins that I've set up with presets already that I can go in and just quickly
Got it.
control. You know, the clarity. We can bring that up there. You know,
Okay.
and that's a complicated plugin, right?
Sure.
But I've already set it up how I want it for that specific food group of track, that bus. You know, so I'm sort of like bus mastering
Right.
each of these different things from a kind of top-down level. I have my master, and then I have my groups, and those groups all have processing on them. And because, like I said, I'm not mixing these cues from scratch, these cues are already pretty much mixed.
Sure.
Well, I'm just kind of going in and adding these just like really train of thought, like, man, let me just like clean that up, compress that, make that really pop. And so it's just really the stem mastering workflow. I can, you know, I've got my little spice section if I need to add. These are just a couple little things that I'll just do, just go to things that I can add. I really like that parallel particles plugin from Waves because it just has like, you know, there's like 5 knobs for just making stuff kind of sound better, thicker. Oh, let's make it thick.
Oh, that's thick.
You know, air, bite. I love simplified plugins
Uh-huh.
where I don't want to look at that. We're seeing this on screen just as an example, but I don't want to look at that when I'm working. I
Sure.
just want to be listening. I want to be hitting the track I want, pushing up what I want, moving on. No stopping, no looking.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Just like your golf swing. Just like that.
Yeah.
Real easy. Back and forth. Alright, what about the SSL guy here?
Okay, so that is a really cool piece of this because originally I just had these 2 iPads.
Right.
And and I have like sort of a main section that has a fader. It's got a solo, it's got a pan. The problem is like, oh man, like I need an actual nice fader. Because
Right.
everybody likes just having a nice
Sure.
fader.
Simulates working on a console. It's tactile.
Exactly. And it'd be nice to, it's nice to have like a little scrub wheel and these sort of like physical buttons for certain things. Play, stop, rewind, that kind of stuff. I've got my little fader here.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing is these are all synced
Yeah,
together.
I can see how that works, yeah.
And this, this just follows the selected track. So if I'm here, I'm on that, I'm on my low perk. Maybe I go to my motors. I'm there. I can do pan.
Okay.
Right? And this just follows the selected track that I'm on. So I only
Alright.
need one fader
Right, at a time.
at a time
Yeah.
because I've got it all set up just to kind of follow. Whether I click somewhere or I'm using the iPad to select that track, that
Okay.
sort of food group. The cool thing about this is the nicest sort of single fader like you can.
I know you've
you can
had
buy.
some other stuff.
I've had
in
a
here
lot of stuff.
that,
I've had a lot of single faders, and the problem is the faders always kind of feel like trash.
Right.
They're cheap. I mean, and to be fair, they're cheap. They're like $100,
Sure,
$150
yeah.
bucks. They're
You
not
and
really.
your Alibaba deals.
They're not. Yeah, they're not really meant to kind of be a premium thing, and it's like, but that was always the kind of like, well, you could buy these huge mixing surfaces, and they had premium faders. or they were sort of locked to like, just Pro Tools or something like that. But SSL came out with this, and I was like, as soon as they came out, I was like, oh man, like,
especially for your custom Reaper setup.
this is like this is the perfect thing.
Exactly, it's not locked in other stuff, but if you do use the SSL plugins like I do, I love those things.
Sure, you can then map them. I can also map any plugins to this right now. So not just the SSL ones, I can map other ones. I have it set up. If I want to actually have a physical knob for something, I can quickly just map that.
Sure, which these would just replace any of these here, and then you also do get the graphical display and everything. So
that's really cool. Like, I mean, that's worth mentioning. So there's a graphical display, and we can kind of play back some audio and hear.
Oh wow, okay.
Real-time analyzer. There's your levels, sluffs.
Super interesting. So did you custom set all those up?
So, I mean, you've got sort of like these views. You have your VU meters, and you can control the ranges on them. I really like this RTA because I can control the range. And so a lot of times, all I want to see is the top 20 dB or even the top 10 dB to look at my low end.
So you almost just kind of crop what part of the spectrum you want to see.
And then I can use this select fine frequency, which is really, really cool. Let's say I want to, look at how my bass is doing, and I want to compare that to a reference track that I've got on iTunes. Or
it'll overlay like then. Is that what you mean?
So it's a little over, so check this out. Let's go back. It's showing me 63 and where that's sitting.
Okay.
And the max value. And so if I just, want to use my eyes instead of my ears on something, especially in the sub-frequencies, if you're, let's say you don't have a full range monitoring system, or you just kind of like want to, sometimes you can get the bass going so much and it just feels really good, and then you're like, well, I'm really overcooking it.
Or like whenever Alex puts a golf floss on a track.
You can just, you're really hammering these guys, huh? So the idea is that you could listen to a reference track and kind of sort of recalibrate your brain to, oh, okay, wow, like I'm undercooking or I'm really overcooking. And it's nice to kind of have that just at hand on these meters. Now, I've done something that is pretty neat that I haven't seen a lot of people do. Generally, they have you run this plugin just on there's a companion plugin that talks to this. So this has no audio connection to it.
Right.
This is just getting data from a plugin that you put on your master fader or your mix bus. Instead of putting it on my mix bus, I want to be able to see all the audio coming out of my system on this so that I can reference. So I want to pull up a YouTube, I want to pull up iTunes, I want to pull up Spotify, and I want all that data because I just always want to be constantly thinking about, okay, what is this level? What is that level? What does that sound like? What am I hearing kind of thing? And so what I've done is I've just basically taken... So I just have like a little loop back. This is just my interface. Everybody's interface is going to look different, but a lot of interfaces are going to allow you to do this. I've just set up sort of a loop back that goes to Blue Cat's Patchwork. And so what that does is this just takes all my audio out of all the different sources on my system, sends it into Blue Cat, and then sends it back into this mixer. I also have my headphone EQ on here, so I've got sort of like an EQ.
You got these fancy headphones.
The LCD 5s sound awesome. I've got a little cross-feed circuit that I use on these. And so I use this as an opportunity to load up any meters that I want also, and in this case, the SSL meter. And there's a million ways you can do this on your system. Like even if you don't have an interface that has this feature, you can set up loopbacks using kind of other software. But that's really a game changer for when you start using metering, whether it's a metering plugin that's just a plugin in your DAW or a metering here. Because
otherwise you got to like rip something, import it into a session, see it on different tracks.
And until you understand, like, oh, my favorite music sounds like this, how loud is it? What is it? So the visual aspect or the numeric aspect doesn't really make sense to you until you gain an instinct for it.
Okay.
And it helps if everything you're listening to out of your computer is coming up on one of your meters. I have this other meter here. I love meters.
You're a meter boy, meter man.
I'm a meter man. And then your brain just starts, making the connection. And so you know how loud is loud or not loud enough. And you know what the number means. I know if I'm shooting for -12 or -14 at a certain level on my monitors, I know exactly what that sounds like because you just get that muscle memory.
A lot of parallels with this in your golf swing.
Oh man!
You're
I hope not, man. I really hope not.
Thinking about starting a golf channel. Let us know if you guys want to see this, and also let us know what questions you have for Brian and other stuff because we out here. We really out here, man.
Yeah, we're making stuff.
Yeah,
and customizing these things.
I love it.
And loving that solid state logic UF1.
Love it.
Yep.
Thank you to Sweet Order for sending that over. Thank you to SSL. Thank you, Brian, for walking us through the steps. Go get yourself a copy of Callisto Protocol and try to dominate the poop slide.
Pipe slide.
Pipe slide, sure. And let us know what you think.